From the jungles of South America to the forests of Southeast Asia, here are 10 of the biggest snakes that ever lived, including a prehistoric monster of outrageous proportions. Burmese Python. There are a lot of big snakes in this world of ours, and one of the largest snakes ever was a Burmese python captured in Florida back in 2012. Researchers with the United States Geological Survey in the state of Florida captured a Burmese python in the Everglades National Park that was approximately 17 feet and 7 inches long. That's 5.4 meters. It weighed 164.5 pounds and was an absolute monster. This obviously is not the biggest snake in existence, but at the time it was the largest ever recorded for that state. What makes this particular find really cool is that scientists later found 87 eggs inside of the snake. This happened after the animal was brought to the Florida Museum of Natural History for some special examinations as part of a research project to try and figure out how to manage the invasive Burmese python problem. As you may know, Burmese pythons are not native to Florida, but they have been wreaking havoc on the ecosystem, eating a lot of native birds and preying on large animals like bobcats, alligators, and deer. Reticulated Python. Back in 2016, one of the world's largest snakes was discovered at a Malaysian construction site. This enormous reticulated python measured a whopping 26.2 feet, 8 meters in length. That makes it larger than 5 grand pianos and almost as long as a giraffe standing on the head of another giraffe. Just think about how long that is for a second. It is absolutely huge. This snake was also longer than Medusa, the longest captive snake on record according to Guinness World Records. However, the snake found in Malaysia would not be breaking any records, as it actually died 3 days after it was discovered while in the middle of laying an egg. And so the reticulated python named Medusa, who makes her home in Kansas City, is still the record holder. According to Live Science, it actually took emergency services about 30 minutes just to wrangle the enormous reticulated python in Malaysia. And while locals claimed that the snake weighed at least 550 pounds, 250 kilograms, that's probably a little far-fetched. An anaconda might weigh upwards of 500 pounds, but not a reticulated python. These snakes are extremely long, but they aren't actually that heavy. Have you ever been bitten by a snake? How did it happen? Did you have to go to the hospital? Let me know what happened in the comments below. Also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button now so you can stay up to date with all the latest videos. African rock python. Pythons are the largest snakes in the world, and while the reticulated python and the Burmese python are the most famous, there is another type of python that often flies under the radar. This snake is known as the African rock python, and it's the only one of its kind that lives in Africa. Most of the pythons live in different places in Asia, specifically in Southeast Asia. The African rock python lives in grasslands and savannas, and sometimes along the edges of the forests in sub-Saharan Africa. The snake is not venomous, and it kills its prey just like other pythons by suffocating its victims between its muscly coils. Like other pythons, this one can grow to be between 20 and 30 feet, 6 to 9 meters, but they don't weigh that much. According to the Oregon Zoo, they only weigh up to 250 pounds. These aren't the biggest pythons by a mile, but they are unique to Africa, and that makes them pretty cool. These pythons have been known to prey on warthogs, monkeys, crocodiles, and even dogs that get too close. Green Anaconda. The green anaconda is the biggest of all the snakes. When it comes down to it, the green anaconda is really an animal out of this world, and you have to see it to truly understand how outrageously huge it is. Anacondas are absolute monsters. Amazon folklore even places these snakes anywhere between 60 and 100 feet, 18 to 30 meters. Obviously, no green anaconda has ever been found that is that large. The biggest anaconda ever reliably documented was only 27.2 feet, 8.6 meters long, according to How Stuff Works. But the legends are still pretty cool. Unlike pythons, anacondas get heavy. These things can weigh upwards of 440 pounds, 200 kilograms. Because the green anaconda is so monstrously heavy, they tend to live in the water. They specifically love the rivers in the Amazon jungle, and they make their homes in the various swamplands of Amazonia. Living in the water allows them to conceal their ridiculously long coils, and it's easier for them to slither through the water than trying to navigate their huge bodies across the forest floor. What's really cool is that the anaconda has its eyeballs sitting on top of its head along with its nostrils, and this allows it to swim through the water while keeping an eye on everything going on around it. These animals don't have any natural predators, so they just kind of float through life without a care. Indian python. There seems to be a python for almost every area east of Europe. The Indian python is one of the largest snakes in the world, only smaller than the anaconda and the reticulated python. These serpents live in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal, and they tend to grow to be a little over 20 feet, 6 meters, weighing somewhere around 150 pounds. Unlike the great anaconda that slithers through rivers, according to the Maryland Zoo, the Indian python is usually found dangling from tree branches where it can easily snatch a meal as it runs by below. These animals even like to claim a favorite roosting site where they spend most of their time lounging around and waiting to feast. Indian pythons hunt mostly at night, and they are well adapted to it because of the heat-sensing pits inside of their jaws. These special organs are incredibly sensitive to any change in temperature, and so whenever a warm-blooded animal starts to come near, the snake can easily prepare itself to strike. Another interesting fact is that when you see a snake like this flicking its tongue, it's not trying to tease you, it's actually gathering chemical samples from the atmosphere that are then analyzed by a unique organ situated inside the roof of the snake's mouth. How's that for a weather system? It's the snake equivalent of licking your thumb and putting it in the wind. Titanoboa. The Titanoboa was the largest snake ever to roam the planet, and it makes the green anaconda look like a baby shrimp. To put it lightly, the Titanoboa was likely somewhere between 40 feet and 50 feet long, 12 to 15 meters. It's impossible to know the exact measurements, but after the recovery of this snake's fossils in Colombia just a few years ago, scientists have a pretty solid idea of how truly titanic this snake once was. The Titanoboa would have lived around 60 million years ago, back when much of South America was a swampy jungle with absolutely no humans in it. It was hotter back then than it is now today, and it was wetter too. And in this wet and humid jungle, there lived one king at the top of the food chain, the Titanoboa. It weighed over a ton, and it likely looked very similar to a modern boa constrictor. However, its actions and behavior would have been much like that of the current anaconda. It would have lived in rivers and other watery areas, and it would have eaten pretty much anything it wanted. One of its favorite meals was probably an ancient turtle that had a shell twice the size of a manhole cover. And even though this snake is most certainly dead and gone, it's still amazing to imagine what it would be like coming face to face with a serpent taller than an average apartment building. King Cobra. The king cobra is the meanest snake in the world. It's a savage serpent with a very venomous bite, and it does not take any nonsense from anyone. Though definitely not the biggest or heaviest, the king cobra is indeed the longest species of venomous snake on the planet. These deadly creatures are native to India and Southeast Asia, with the average snake measuring around 12 feet, 3.6 meters in length. According to Guinness World Records, the longest specimen on record was captured in 1937 in Malaysia, then put on display at the London Zoo. It measured 18 feet and 8 inches, 6 meters. That's like the size of a small anaconda. This record-breaking snake actually had to be destroyed when World War II broke out, along with the other venomous snakes at the zoo. While this may seem cruel, it was done in order to protect the general public in case the zoo was bombed and all the venomous snakes got loose. Imagine a nearly 20-foot king cobra slithering through your bomb shelter and biting you in the face. Boa Constrictor. The boa constrictor is the cousin of the anaconda. Both these snakes are amazing swimmers, but the boa constrictor is significantly smaller than its famous relative. The poor little boa constrictor can only grow to be around 13 feet, 4 meters long, and it typically does not weigh more than 100 pounds, 40 kilograms. And maybe it's this weight differential that gives the two snakes such contrasting behavioral patterns. Rather than slithering through the water like the anaconda, the boa constrictor likes to live in hollow logs, abandoned mammal burrows underground, or somewhere else nice and cozy on dry land. These snakes are still good swimmers, but they prefer to hang out on the shore eating birds, monkeys, and wild pigs. Their jaws can stretch wide enough to swallow just about any prey whole. What's really cool about the boa constrictor is that it has some of the most distinctive markings out of any reptile. It all depends on what habitat the boa constrictor is trying to blend into. Depending on where it is, the snake can either be tan, red, green, or yellow, and its pattern will also be different, ranging from something simple like ovals or diamonds to jagged lines. Olive python. Our final python on the list for today is the olive python from Australia. Like I said earlier, it's as if every place in the world has its own special python. This particular bad boy is able to eat everything from kangaroos to possums, porcupines, and even wild crocodiles. Even though these aren't nearly as big as reticulated pythons or Burmese pythons, they are still the biggest snakes in Australia at roughly 13 feet, 4 meters in length. and in a most recent show of strength, photos were uploaded by GG Wildlife Rescue Incorporated after an olive python was caught gobbling down a full crocodile like a fat guy with a donut. It's a little disturbing to see the snake's body bloated and about a foot of the alligator's tail sticking out from its mouth, but that's just how these snakes roll. Clearly, they are at the top of the food chain. However, after eating such a large meal, it usually takes a few months for it to be digested. This greedy snake will be sitting there with the crocodile in its stomach for quite some time before it can get back to whatever it was doing before. Black Mamba. Last on the list is the black mamba. It's a far cry from the pythons and constrictors of the world, but it's still a huge snake. Not only that, but it's a snake with a reputation. It's one of the deadliest snakes in the entire world, and it's also the fastest land snake according to Live Science. It's the longest venomous snake in Africa, and the danger of this beast has been the subject of countless African myths. Throughout the years, the black mamba has been blamed for thousands of human deaths, though the real number of the snake's victims are extremely difficult to come by. On average, a black mamba will grow to be around 14 feet, 4 meters long, though they are more likely going to be only 8 feet, 2.5 meters. 14 is definitely on the larger side. You can easily tell the black mamba from its coffin-shaped head, its bad attitude, and its inky black eyes. These snakes live in the savanna of East Africa and South Africa. They like rocky hills and open woodlands, and according to the University of Michigan Museum of Zoology, they really enjoy sleeping in the hollows of trees, so think twice before sticking your head where it doesn't belong on your next trip to Africa. Which of these monster snakes frightens you the most? Share your fears in the comments section, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and come back soon for another great video.